Deep underground at a classified facility, a commander is shown something that defies all logic: floating saucers with beings inside, communicating telepathically with human personnel. This isn't science fiction. The Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office identified 21 UAP cases in 2024 that merit further analysis due to anomalous characteristics, and according to 2025's updated intelligence files, these encounters are now reported across 6 U.S. states. The beings claim they're part of a galactic monitoring system, watching how life develops on planets like Earth. But Danny Sheehan's latest research reveals newly declassified documents showing covert crash retrieval protocols dating back to the 1950s. With Congress now mandating quarterly UAP briefings, the real question isn't whether aliens exist, it's what they're really doing here, and the data coming out this year is forcing everyone to pay attention. The 2025 UAP statistics that changed everything. The numbers coming out of 2025 are absolutely staggering. AARO's quarterly reports show over 1,200 UAP incidents documented through official channels this year alone, representing the highest concentration of verified encounters in recorded history. These aren't your typical lights in the sky reports either. We're seeing structured craft, close encounters, and multiple witness events happening at a rate that's forcing government agencies to completely restructure how they handle this phenomenon. The geographic patterns tell a story that's impossible to ignore. Nevada leads with the highest concentration of reported sightings, which makes sense given the military facilities there. But what's really interesting is the emergence of hotspots in places that weren't on anyone's radar before. Wyoming has reported significant encounter clusters, most of them around areas where geological surveys show extensive underground cavern systems. The pattern suggests these beings are using existing geological features for their operations. Military personnel reports have tripled from 2024 numbers, but it's the content of these reports that's really eye-opening. We're seeing detailed accounts from base security personnel describing encounters with craft emerging from what appear to be underground access points. One Air Force sergeant reported watching a disc-shaped object rise directly from the ground at a location where no surface facilities existed. When they investigated the area the next day, ground-penetrating radar showed hollow spaces extending hundreds of feet down. Similar reports are coming from Army installations across multiple states, all describing the same phenomenon of craft emerging from underground locations. The correlation between increased sightings and government disclosure activities is undeniable. Analysis shows sightings spike dramatically after every major disclosure event or congressional hearing. It's as if these beings are responding to our disclosure efforts by increasing their visibility. The beings seem to be calibrating their presence based on our readiness to acknowledge them publicly. Government agencies have completely overhauled their approach to encounters. The old dismissive protocols are being replaced with active investigation frameworks. AARO now operates with full staffing and quarterly briefing requirements to Congress. Type Alpha encounters involve visual sightings with radar confirmation, while Type Gamma covers direct interaction with non-human entities. This new system is being used by military intelligence, NASA, and civilian research organizations to create standardized reporting protocols. Civilian reporting has evolved dramatically with improved verification systems. The Canadian Sky Canada project report shows that between 15 to 40% of civilian reports are being classified as credible after verification processes that cross-reference witness accounts with radar data and military aircraft positions. Citizens can now file reports directly with federal agencies without fear of ridicule or dismissal. This represents thousands of genuine encounters being documented monthly through official channels. The shift from dismissal to active investigation represents a complete reversal of decades-old policies. FBI field offices now have dedicated UAP investigation teams trained in evidence collection and witness interview techniques. The Department of Defense has reassigned personnel from other duties to focus specifically on UAP investigations. NASA has established dedicated research divisions with substantial budgets for 2025. These agencies are treating UAP encounters as legitimate national security matters requiring immediate investigation and documentation. Statistical anomalies in the data point to coordinated non-human activity rather than random encounters. Sightings occur in clusters separated by consistent time intervals across multiple states simultaneously. The craft appear to be following predetermined flight paths that avoid major population centers while maintaining specific altitude profiles. Communication intercepts from military radar operators show these objects responding to air traffic control instructions before official contact is attempted. The precision and coordination suggest a level of organization and intelligence that rules out natural phenomena or experimental human technology. Danny Sheehan's legal work anticipated this statistical explosion. His congressional testimony referenced the fiscal 2024 NDAA provision requiring declassification of UAP documents by September 2025. He argued that disclosure efforts would trigger increased extraterrestrial visibility as these beings prepared humanity for more direct contact. His timeline projected exactly what we're seeing now: massive increases in sightings, coordinated government acknowledgement, and establishment of formal protocols for interaction. These statistics are forcing intelligence agencies to completely reevaluate the scope and nature of the phenomenon. The National Intelligence Council has established assessment groups to analyze the implications of sustained non-human presence on Earth. Their preliminary findings suggest we're dealing with multiple species operating under some form of coordinated supervision. The encounter data shows different types of craft with distinct design characteristics appearing in geographically separated regions, indicating either multiple groups or a single organization with diverse technological capabilities. Regional analysis reveals specific patterns that suggest territorial organization. Pacific Coast encounters predominantly involve triangular craft with silent propulsion systems. Great Lakes region sightings feature disc-shaped objects with visible energy fields. Desert Southwest reports describe cylindrical craft with advanced camouflage capabilities. These regional differences in craft design and behavior suggest either different species with preferred operational areas or a single group using specialized technology for different environments and missions. Intelligence analysts are now treating the 2025 statistics as baseline data for what appears to be a permanent new reality rather than a temporary surge in activity. The numbers aren't declining as the year progresses, they're stabilizing at levels that represent a fundamental change in the relationship between human civilization and whatever intelligence controls these craft. The data suggests we've entered a new phase where these beings are maintaining a consistent, visible presence while working through established channels to formalize contact protocols. But statistics only tell part of the story. To understand what's really happening, we need to look at where these craft are going when they disappear from radar. Recent intelligence suggests the answer lies deep underground at facilities that have been operating in complete secrecy for decades. Inside the updated S4 operations. S4's operational expansion in 2025 has transformed the facility into something far beyond its original scope. New intelligence from inside sources reveals construction crews working around the clock to build additional levels that extend deeper into the Nevada mountainside. Current estimates put the facility at 12 operational levels, each one dedicated to specific aspects of extraterrestrial research and interaction. Workers with security clearances describe massive boring operations that have been ongoing for 8 months, creating new chambers large enough to house craft that dwarf the original recovered vehicles stored there decades ago. Multiple witnesses now confirm that S4 houses at least 18 different craft in separate underground hangars, each one isolated in its own secure area with independent life support and monitoring systems. Unlike the original 3 or 4 vehicles that were simply stored there, these craft are maintained in operational condition, with teams of engineers and technicians conducting daily inspections and testing procedures. Personnel describe seeing craft that appear to be in various states of functionality, from completely inert vehicles to others that display active energy signatures and responsive control systems. The hangars themselves have been redesigned with reinforced containment fields and electromagnetic shielding that can be activated if any of the craft show unexpected activity. Communication protocols established at S4 represent the most significant development in human-alien interaction documented to date. Teams of specially trained linguists, psychologists, and military intelligence officers work in shifts to maintain ongoing dialogue with recovered beings housed in the facility's biological containment areas. These sessions follow structured formats using prepared question sets similar to diplomatic negotiations, with human personnel presenting queries through telepathic interfaces while recording all responses for analysis by teams of cryptographers and xenobiologists. The beings have provided detailed information about their origins, their monitoring activities on Earth, and the broader galactic community they represent. Oscar Wolf's deathbed testimony to Danny Sheehan provides crucial context for understanding S4's evolution. Wolf described witnessing his commander communicate telepathically with a being behind a one-way mirror, using index cards with prepared questions. The being claimed to represent different star systems within the galaxy, tasked with monitoring planets where life had begun. Wolf's account of seeing actual saucers floating in underground hangars matches current reports from facility personnel, suggesting the basic operational structure has remained consistent even as the scale has expanded dramatically. The facility has evolved from simple storage and study to active research and interaction, with laboratories dedicated to reverse engineering alien technology and medical facilities equipped to maintain the health of non-human entities in captivity. Research teams work to understand propulsion systems, energy generation methods, and communication technologies recovered from crash sites and intact vehicles. Medical personnel have developed life support protocols that can sustain different types of alien physiology, with each being requiring specialized atmospheric conditions, nutrition, and environmental controls. The complexity of these operations requires hundreds of personnel with various specializations, all working under the highest levels of security classification. International personnel from allied nations now participate in joint operations at S4, marking a significant shift toward multinational cooperation on extraterrestrial matters. Scientists and military officers from the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and Japan have been granted access to specific areas of the facility as part of intelligence sharing agreements. These foreign personnel bring specialized expertise in areas where American capabilities are limited, including advanced materials science, quantum computing, and biological research. The presence of international teams also serves as verification that S4 operations are being conducted according to agreed-upon protocols rather than purely American interests. Security upgrades implemented throughout 2025 include biometric identification systems that scan retinas, fingerprints, and genetic markers before granting access to any area of the facility. New containment procedures involve triple redundant locking mechanisms on all chambers housing alien technology or beings, with automated systems that can seal entire sections if breach protocols are detected. Personnel are required to undergo psychological evaluation every 30 days to ensure they remain mentally stable while working with non-human entities and advanced technologies. Communication monitoring systems record all interactions between human staff and alien beings to prevent unauthorized information sharing or psychological manipulation. Successful telepathic communication sessions have yielded unprecedented insights into alien intentions and capabilities, with human operators trained to maintain mental barriers while receiving information from non-human sources. These operators undergo months of preparation, including meditation training, psychological conditioning, and practice with electromagnetic amplification devices that enhance human telepathic receptivity. Session transcripts reveal conversations about galactic politics, the purpose of Earth monitoring programs, and warnings about potential threats from hostile alien factions. The beings consistently emphasize their role as observers and researchers rather than conquerors, though they acknowledge other groups with different intentions. The technology used to facilitate telepathic communication involves electromagnetic field generators that synchronize human brainwave patterns with alien neural frequencies. These devices, originally developed through reverse engineering alien equipment, create a shared mental space where thoughts can be exchanged despite the biological differences between species. Operators report that successful communication requires complete mental focus and emotional stability, as alien thought patterns can be overwhelming for unprepared human minds. Safety protocols limit communication sessions to 30-minute intervals with mandatory recovery periods to prevent psychological damage to human participants. Documentation from S4 operations now fills entire warehouses with technical specifications, communication transcripts, and research findings that will take decades to fully analyze and understand. This information forms the foundation for humanity's preparation for broader contact with alien civilizations, providing crucial insights into their technology, social structures, and intentions regarding Earth. The facility continues expanding its operations as more recovered craft and beings arrive, with each new addition providing additional pieces of the puzzle surrounding extraterrestrial presence on Earth. But understanding these beings requires more than just communication. It requires examining the physical evidence they've left behind across decades of contact. The Crash Retrieval Evidence Revolution. Recovery teams working across 6 states have uncovered 17 previously unknown crash sites during 2025, with some incidents dating back to the 1940s that somehow escaped official documentation. These sites were located using declassified military flight path data, cross-referenced with geological surveys showing unusual mineral deposits and electromagnetic anomalies in the soil. The most significant discovery came from rural Montana, where investigators found nearly intact sections of a vehicle that crashed in 1952, complete with internal components still generating detectable energy signatures after 70 years. Advanced spectroscopic analysis techniques developed in 2025 have revealed properties in recovered materials that weren't detectable with previous technology. Scientists at Los Alamos National Laboratory use quantum scanning systems that analyze molecular structures at the subatomic level, revealing that alien alloys contain isotopes that don't occur naturally on Earth. These materials demonstrate properties that violate known physics, including negative mass characteristics and the ability to manipulate gravitational fields at the molecular level. Laboratory tests show that small samples of recovered hull material can reduce their apparent weight by up to 40% when subjected to specific electromagnetic frequencies. High-resolution imaging systems can now penetrate the hull materials of stored vehicles to reveal internal structures without damaging the artifacts. These scans show that what appeared to be solid hull sections actually contain intricate networks of microscopic channels that carry energy throughout the craft's structure. The internal architecture includes what appear to be biological components integrated with mechanical systems, suggesting these vehicles are grown rather than manufactured. Some craft contain chambers filled with a liquid substance that maintains specific chemical properties even after decades of storage. Mysterious symbols found on multiple recovered vehicles appear to represent some form of standardized identification system used across different craft types. Military analysts have cataloged over 200 distinct symbols appearing on vehicles recovered from crashes spanning 7 decades, with certain symbol combinations appearing consistently on craft found in different geographic regions. The symbols are not etched or painted onto hull surfaces but appear embedded within the material itself, becoming visible only when subjected to specific lighting conditions or electromagnetic fields. Linguistic experts working with the Pentagon's Cryptographic Analysis Division have identified patterns suggesting the symbols represent numerical systems, navigation coordinates, or manufacturing specifications. Evidence from crash sites indicates at least 4 distinct types of craft designs, each with unique propulsion systems and hull materials that suggest different origins or purposes. Classic disc-shaped vehicles represent about 60% of recovered craft, with hull designs optimized for atmospheric flight and ground-based operations. Triangular craft make up roughly 25% of recoveries and feature advanced stealth capabilities, with hull materials that absorb radar and visual light across multiple spectrums. Cylindrical vehicles represent about 10% of recoveries and appear designed for long-distance travel, with internal compartments suggesting crew quarters and extended mission capabilities. Statistical analysis reveals a direct correlation between crash sites and subsequent increases in UAP activity within a 50-mile radius of recovery locations. Regions where crashes occurred in the 1950s and 1960s continue to experience above-average sighting rates, with some areas showing activity levels 5 times higher than the national average. Electronic surveillance equipment placed near historical crash sites has detected regular electromagnetic pulses that correspond with increased aerial activity, suggesting these locations remain important to whatever intelligence controls the craft. Physical evidence from multiple crash sites indicates that some incidents were intentional landings rather than accidental impacts. Impact patterns at certain sites show evidence of powered descent rather than uncontrolled crashes, with landing gear impressions and minimal debris fields suggesting the craft were set down deliberately. Witness testimonies from military personnel describe finding vehicles that appeared intact except for specific components that had been deliberately removed, as if the occupants had time to extract critical systems before abandoning the craft. These controlled crash scenarios typically occur in remote military training areas or near classified installations. Material analysis has revealed that recovered craft components show signs of intentional design for eventual human discovery and study. Hull materials contain microscopic structures that become more apparent when examined with terrestrial scientific equipment, almost as if they were designed to reveal their properties gradually as human technology advanced. Internal components include interfaces that appear compatible with human physiology, including control surfaces sized for human hands and display systems that respond to human neural activity. These design elements suggest the craft operators anticipated eventual human interaction and incorporated features that would facilitate technology transfer. Chain of custody documentation reveals significant gaps in how crash evidence has been preserved over decades, with some materials disappearing entirely from secure storage facilities, while others have been transferred between agencies without proper documentation. Military personnel involved in early recovery operations report that orders came directly from Pentagon officials who removed evidence within hours of crash discoveries, often before local military commanders could conduct thorough investigations. Several former military officers have testified that crash materials were regularly transferred to private defense contractors for analysis, creating a dispersed network of evidence that makes comprehensive study difficult. Documentation from crash retrievals consistently corroborates witness testimonies from military personnel who reported encounters with intact craft and surviving occupants. Witness descriptions of craft capabilities, occupant characteristics, and technology features match physical evidence found at crash sites separated by decades and thousands of miles. Military records show that personnel involved in crash recoveries often reported subsequent encounters with similar craft in the same geographic regions, supporting theories that these incidents are part of ongoing operations rather than isolated accidents. This evidence fundamentally challenges previous assumptions about non-human technology and intentions, suggesting these beings operate under protocols that anticipate human discovery of their capabilities. The technological integration features, intentional crash patterns, and ongoing activity near recovery sites indicate a systematic approach to gradual disclosure rather than accidental exposure. Intelligence agencies now interpret crash retrievals as part of a larger program designed to slowly introduce humanity to advanced technologies while monitoring our readiness for more direct contact. The consistency between physical evidence and witness accounts has convinced analysts that we're dealing with coordinated operations spanning decades, but the full scope of these activities is only now becoming clear as those who witnessed them firsthand finally feel safe enough to speak publicly. Military personnel break their silence. Throughout 2025, military personnel have been coming forward with accounts that would have been impossible to share just 2 years ago. The wave started in January when a former Air Force technical sergeant testified before Congress about his experiences at Malmstrom Air Force Base in the 1980s. He described being assigned to a special detail that transported equipment to underground areas he never knew existed. The sergeant said his commanding officer brought him to what they called the lower levels, where he saw craft that weren't in any manual he'd ever studied. These weren't experimental aircraft from Lockheed or Boeing. They were sitting there in these huge underground bays, and some of them were giving off this low humming sound even though nobody was operating them. What makes these 2025 testimonies different is the specificity. A Navy electronics technician who worked at China Lake Naval Weapons Station described being called down to Sublevel 7 during a night shift in 1995. He said they had him run diagnostics on communication equipment that was unlike anything in the Navy inventory. The displays showed symbols instead of English text, and when he asked his supervisor about it, he was told the equipment was for special diplomatic communications. The technician said he later learned that Sublevel 7 was where they kept what his co called the visitors. He never saw them directly, but he heard conversations in languages that didn't sound human coming from secured areas behind reinforced doors. The UAP Disclosure Act passed in late 2024 created legal protections for military whistleblowers that didn't exist before. Personnel who were previously afraid of court-martial or loss of security clearances now have statutory protection when they report UAP-related activities through proper channels. A former Army intelligence officer who served at Fort Carson described how this protection finally allowed him to report what he witnessed in 2003. He said his unit was tasked with providing security for a recovery operation in the Colorado mountains after radar operators tracked an object that went down during a thunderstorm. The recovery team found a craft that was mostly intact, with occupants inside that were still alive but injured. Reports from different military branches spanning 5 decades show remarkable consistency in their descriptions of underground operations and non-human contact. Air Force personnel from Nellis, Navy technicians from Point Mugu, and Army officers from White Sands all describe similar experiences with craft stored in subterranean facilities and ongoing interaction programs with recovered beings. A former Marine Corps security specialist who worked at 29 Palms described being assigned to what they called deep patrol duties that took him into natural cave systems that had been modified with concrete reinforcement and electrical systems. He said there were areas down there where the lighting was different, almost like daylight but coming from panels in the ceiling, and the air had a metallic taste that made breathing difficult without respiratory equipment. The personal costs these individuals faced before speaking publicly cannot be understated. Many lost their careers, their marriages, and their relationships with family members who couldn't handle the implications of what they were sharing. A former Air Force logistics officer described 20 years of nightmares and anxiety attacks after witnessing what he called diplomatic meetings between senior military officials and beings that were clearly not human. He said he started drinking heavily to cope with what he'd seen and eventually lost his security clearance and his career. The officer said he attempted suicide twice before finding the courage to seek help and eventually speak publicly about his experiences. Verification processes being used to authenticate these testimonies include psychological stress evaluators that can detect deception with high accuracy rates. The New Paradigm Institute has been conducting these evaluations on military witnesses, and the results consistently support the truthfulness of their accounts. A former Navy sonar technician who claimed to have tracked unidentified underwater objects off the California coast passed multiple polygraph examinations and psychological evaluations. His accounts of objects moving underwater at speeds that would be impossible for any known submarine technology have been corroborated by radar data and witness statements from other naval personnel who were on duty during the same time periods. The coordinated nature of encounters described by military personnel indicates these are not random events but part of systematic operations. Multiple witnesses describe being briefed on protocols for interaction with non-human entities, suggesting established procedures for managing ongoing contact. A former Army communications specialist described being trained on special radio equipment that was used to coordinate with what his commanding officer called our diplomatic partners. The specialist said the training included instruction on communication procedures that involved specific frequency ranges and signal patterns that were unlike anything used for human military communications. Direct interaction accounts from military personnel include detailed descriptions of communication with non-human entities.